record. And then Firefox, okay.
Oh, wait, I gotta share screen, right? Wait, do I
Did
share?
you? I
think
didn't.
You did.
I just started recording.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So share screen and then hit present? Is that the way it works? Firefox or desktop? Maybe desktop?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you. All right. And then hide, there's a hide. Hide floating meeting controls, okay. And then.
Yeah.
Okay, I think. You got this, okay?
Let's open them. Yay. Hello, everyone. I'm Abby.
I'm Ashton, and this is our presentation on the duck-billed giant. So the duck-billed giant, also known as Parasophilus. Oh, sorry. It was known as the near-crested lizard. It was the category of the hadrosaurs, and it lived in North America, as north as Alberta, Canada, all the way down to New Mexico. It was an herbivore, and something interesting about this dinosaur is that it was bipedal, but in times of foraging, it could walk on all fours. This is just a diagram of its sheer size compared to a modern day human. It reached up to maximum lengths of 15 feet in height. And yeah, it was just a massive dinosaur. It weighed as much as 5,500 pounds, which is comparable to a modern day elephant. Parasophilus lived after the Jurassic period in the late Cretaceous period, 76 million years ago. As an herbivore, its diet consisted of fresh leaves, ferns, cycads, conifers, early flowering plants, as well as woody plants, which were all abundant in its environment. We modeled Parasophilus as a hindgut fermenter from fossil structures, indicating its dentures were adapted for processing tough plant material in conjunction with its large body size and its plant-based diet. Reason and evidence pointing away from foregut fermentation were that there are no specialized foregut adaptations found. Moving on to the statement of purpose is to design and analyze the feeding, digestion, and metabolic processes of Parasophilus to determine how it met its daily energy and nutrient requirements based on its estimated metabolic rate and available food sources at the time.
So for methods, for our overview of methods and our modeling strategy, we estimated food intake from nutritional content of the plant material, its energy densities, the surface area of its gut, and we also simulated GI tract using or by comparing modern herbivores animals' digestive processes, and we compared two types of food based on two different categories of plant material. So first step, we estimated nutrient content from Dairy1 Web. For percent proteins was derived from soluble protein times crude protein times dry matter. Percent carb was derived from water-soluble carb plus starch and times by dry matter. And percent of fat was crude fat times dry matter. And these percentages derived represent the actual nutrient content from the fresh food. Next step, we estimated our total food intake by summing up the percentage of each nutrient based on dry matter times by its caloric value, and then finally times by water content. And then for the mass of food intake per day was derived from DMR divided by energy density and then divided by 90% assimilation efficiency. Our third step was calculating the limiting nutrient. The total mass of each nutrient is equal to food intake times nutrient composition. And then we converted the mass of nutrients into moles. And then finally, whichever has the highest gram moles per day is our limiting nutrient. And the next step, we calculated the gut surface area. The transporter rate of the limiting nutrient was determined from Withers Supplement 18-1. The Q10 effect was not applied due to our animal's normal body temperature range, and then convert to centimeters square. The amount of leaves per day was calculated by total daily food intake in grams divided by weight of one leaf, which is about 20 grams per leaf. Last step, we calculated the intestinal length by referring to our calculated gut surface area and rhino's gut diameter. So from here, we used Indian rhino's gut diameter, which is about 8 centimeters. The reason why we use rhino as a reference, because rhinos, they are also hindgut fermenters, and they share a similar diet and body mass as our animal.
Okay, moving on to the results. This is a table of our 2 food groups we analyzed from Dairy 1. From the nutritional contents derived from this list here, we can further calculate the different parameters, such as energy density in kilojoules per gram, daily food intake in grams per day, limiting nutrient moles per day, surface area, and intestinal length. In this table, we see energy density for fresh leaves are almost double that of woody plants. This means that it was able to eat a lot less food in the category of fresh leaves, affecting the modeling of internal structures being significantly smaller in comparison to woody plants. You can see by the numbers 67,000 and 76,388 for fresh leaves and woody plants respectively in terms of the surface area. After further calculations, we concluded that it had to eat 4,689 cycad leaves per day if it was only eating fresh leaves, excluding all other plant material. The reason for choosing cycad leaves is that because it was heavily abundant in the forest that it lived in, and it was widely available for foragers looking for quick sustenance. This is our rough sketch of the gut model. As you can see, the total length of the gut is 26 meters, which is almost triple that of the total animal length of 10 meters. Different structures are drawn in regards to being a hindgut fermenter, such as the main fermentation chamber coming after the small intestine for the VFAs, and yes. Conclusions.
So to conclude, which food type is a better option for our animal? In terms of energy density, fresh leaves would provide more energy per gram since it has a higher energy density compared to woody plants. For limiting nutrient, fresh leaves provide a slightly lower demand for carbohydrates, meaning that it requires a smaller moles per day. Which means it's more efficient source of energy. For surface area of gut, the surface area of the gut required to absorb nutrients from woody plants is larger, whereas fresh leaves is a little lower, and which means it's easier to digest and absorb. For the intestinal length, fresh leaves with their higher energy density allows more efficient nutrient absorption over a shorter intestinal length. So overall, from here, we can see fresh leaves will be a better food option for our animal. So proportionality to its body size, by comparing to modern herbivore like rhinos, the average mass of rhinos is about 2,100 kilograms, with its gut length about 20 meters, comparing with our animal, 2,500 kilograms with a gut length of 26 meters. And from here, we can see a trend where as the body mass increases, the gut length also increases. And we can also assume that our calculated gut length does seem to fit into our animal's body. We can also conclude that our animal has an extremely large gut to support its diet. It's well adapted to process large quantities of low energy and fibrous materials. It required abundant vegetation to sustain metabolic demands. And it can also be compared with other massive herbivores at the time. Thank you. Any questions? Yeah.
Just like on, no, like, in terms of like your mass comparison, how can we start with the elephant and the jet, like, throughout the presentation, you guys moved to the right? Not to mean the big head, just one.
So for the gut diameter wise, elephant has a more complex GI tract and it has a larger gut, I believe. It's we couldn't refer to elephant because the gut diameter was way too big.
Okay.
Yeah, it was about 13 to 16. So we refer to rhinos instead. But in general, rhinos, they do have similar body mass as our animals.
Any questions?
Okay.
All right, I was just wondering, could you like explain that habitat, like, you explain like the diet was like leaves?
Yeah.
Were there other like things around them?
So
Yeah,
yeah, it's in the picture. It's
Conifers, ferns, early flowering plants and woody plants, all conducive to living in a forested environment.
Really cool temperature. They're like.
oh okay.
I guess that would affect the migration routes of Parasophilus, whereas it lived mainly in humid and warm environments. So there wasn't really any research in regards to living in colder climates.
Yeah, really excellent talk.
Thank you.
Very good job. Guys.
Thank you.
Like, really strong content. I would like to see a bit more, but I mean, for our first talk, this is just wonderful. But for future, you might think about like, you know, spending a little more time painting a picture of your animal. Like, what did the environment look like? You know, like that's really great, but you could talk more about it, you know, like a swampy jungle, a lush vegetation, you know, like just more about the animal itself. To kind of make it a lot more interesting. And then don't forget to tell us your initial assumptions, like what was the animal TMR, you know?
Mhm.
And then maybe like start from you want to kind of end your intro with like, it had this enormous DMR. So our question is, how did it supply it, right? And then kind of go into your more specific statement of purpose, which is really, really great. But you know, like a little bit more storytelling and connecting the dots. So that it's like more of a story and not just about the numbers. Yeah, you guys know what I mean, but really excellent content. Did you folks take account of hindgut fermentation in this talk? Is this without hindgut fermentation?
Yes, this is without.
Okay, cool. Well, that would be like super fabulous to include for your paper. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Wow.
So nice. Ours does not look as good as theirs.
It's not about beauty, it's about content.
Okay, so whenever you guys are ready for us to start, I guess we go.
All right, our second talk.
Hi, everyone. I'm Adam,
I'm Veronica.
and this is our presentation on Castrocauda lutra similis and its nutritional analysis and its GI tract.
So pretty much like our animal was an early form of like mammalia forms from the family like Belcodonte. And they're like an early ancestor of modern day monotremes, which are mammals that lay eggs and nurse live young like the platypus and the echidna. And they lived during the late Jurassic in an area of northern China. And this would have been like a more humid and warmer climate during that time. And then this is all based off of like the one fossil that has been found. Oh yeah. And then because of like the fossil arrangements of the forelimbs of the fossil, it's hypothesized that its lifestyle was really close to that of the platypus because it would have had a lot of difficulty moving on land. So it would have lived more so in an area where like really close to the water with a lot of like vegetation in the picture. And then, but unlike the modern day platypus, our animal had a set of lower and upper teeth, which is like used to like crush and shear prey and everything, while the platypus just has to rely on like its bill and rocks to grind its food and everything. And then an interesting fact is that modern day platypuses don't have a stomach. Their esophagus just goes directly to their small intestine. And so we also use this to base our digestive tract.
Yeah, there's no acidic portion in their stomach, so we base it off of that as well. And so we needed the mass in DMR for our animal. We estimated at 650 grams from our fossil records. And in one day, on average, it would need about 387 kilojoules of energy to supply its basic lifestyle. It spends most of its time in a burrow, which we based off of a platypus, and would forage in the water at the bottom for bottom feeding type animals. So that would be this. They forage at the bottom of bodies of water. So their main source of food was invertebrates, mainly crustaceans, annelids, mollusks, and insect larvae that live down there. And so our statement of purpose was how much of this food would Castrocauda need to consume to support its daily metabolic rate? And could the GI tract needed to support this amount of food fit inside Castrocauda? And something that's not up here as well, we were curious about how it went from a jaw with teeth and molars and things like that to a bill of a platypus, how that evolved and why that was the case. So our methods, we calculated the nutritional analysis for the food they ate based off of those bottom feeding invertebrates. We found the limiting component of food for rate of digestion, which was protein in our case. And the mammal absorption rate is 276 nanomoles. We got that from Withers as well. And then from rate of digestion, we were able to calculate surface area, volume, and length of the gut using the volume and surface area of a cylinder.
So the main foods we base the diet of Castrocauda off of is crustaceans like crayfish and all of that, and then we do mealworms.
Insect larvae, yeah,
And like
mealworms.
insect larvae such as like mealworms. So both of these food sources are like really high in protein and water content. So they would have to like eat a significant amount to get their daily energy intake. Also based on the fact their food was small.
Yeah, so their gut length was estimated at 35 centimeters, a gut diameter of 1.5 centimeters based on a platypus, a volume of 62.5 centimeters cubed, and a surface area of 166 centimeters about. And so we have our rough estimation of what the gut would look like. I am taking commissions on art, by the way, so if you need that, let me know. But basically it enters straight from the esophagus through the longer, smaller intestine to absorb more nutrients. And it has a shorter, large intestine because it's mostly water that they're reabsorbing back into their food. And we compare that to a platypus. This is a little bit more out of date, but they have a really long gut, a small stomach, and a smaller, large intestine as well, too.
And then pretty much for our conclusion is that the dimensions of the gut did support the lifestyle, along with it being able to like fit inside the body and able to store all that food. And then like one of the theories about why it evolved from having teeth to not having teeth is the fact that its food was so soft and it didn't need to like crush or grind that much. So over time, they just lost that trait.
And so they would need to eat about 6 or 7 crayfish on average to meet their daily metabolic requirements, or like 90 or so insect larvae because they're much smaller. The crayfish were larger, so they needed to hunt less of them, but they were grazers, so they just ate whatever was available. So it would most likely be a combination of both the crayfish and the larvae. They got their glucose because there's very little carbs in any of the food they eat, but most of the glucose carbs came from those insect larvae and what they actually ate. And so another interesting thing was the calcium bicarbonate of the shells would neutralize their stomach acids. So over time, they would evolve to lose those genes that produce stomach acids in the stomach. And so they were just not necessary. And so more and more of the intermediates between Castricata and a platypus would lose. They had less and less stomach acids, and eventually they would all be gone. And it was easier for them to just suck in water and their prey instead of having to open their jaw and crush it for chewing. And so, yeah, that's kind of our presentation. Any wish? Oh, yeah, and our bibliography too. Yes, Abby.
It gives the genes to produce the stomach acid.
Mhm. So their mucosal lining, oh, that's actually a good point. So they have a different epithelial lining to their small intestine. They have stratified squamous cells, and they produce a thick layer of mucus that increase surface area, kind of like the microvilli in the small intestine of other mammals. And so that's where they mainly absorb the nutrients from. Anyone else? No?
Okay, you all have to ask questions, so.
How did I draw so good? I don't know. Sorry.
They don't produce stomach acid,
Yeah, they don't produce stomach acid.
then platypus do.
They have a stomach, but they don't produce any stomach acid in their stomach. It's just lined with a bunch of mucus instead.
And they have like special glands that like produce and secrete the mucus.
That make their stomach super, like really basic since they're shells. They consume the shells.
Yeah, they consume shells, but it's more like neutral. Like they found that the pH of a platypus stomach was around 6. So it is still slightly acidic, but a normal stomach has like a pH of like 1 or 2. So like in comparison, it's orders of magnitude less acidic than other mammals.
Isn't it good to have a
Yeah, you want an acidic stomach to break down their food, but the calcium carbonate neutralized it, so it wasn't doing anything. Like it had no purpose essentially.
Yeah.
The
And
stomach
because
acid.
a lot of their food was just such a soft consistency, by the time it like reached the digestive tract, there's really no need to like break it down further.
So Kyle, you got 2 chances left to ask questions. And same for you guys. You can't ask, oh, you did, Mohammed. You can't ask a question for your own talk, right? So your chances are dwindling, is what I'm trying to say. Amanda, Malia?
Yes, Ashton.
Given that it was semi-aquatic, was there any research pointing to it having a diet on terrestrial
So its movement was limited on land and it was a nocturnal animal to avoid predation during the day because it lived in the Jurassic period with all those big scary dinosaurs. So there really wasn't a need for it to be on land outside of its burrow because it also stayed in its burrow to maintain heat balance as well for when it's resting and stuff like that. So there really wasn't any, like its food was too fast on land essentially, and most of its food was in the water, so it would be around its food. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, my question was gonna be, like, because you only said that they only like had to eat like 5 to 7 fish a day, and I was like, that's seems like a small amount, but you mentioned that you would mostly spend most of this time in the world.
Yeah, it spent the entire time the sun was out in its burrow and even a couple hours extra after that.
Do they think that they like made dams?
No, they just burrowed mostly like on the side of the riverbank as opposed to like creating a space for themselves. So they were nocturnal, so they didn't really get anything. They would keep their body temperature was actually pretty warm, so their natural body heat they give off would in an insulated burrow would help maintain heat balance for them.
And they had really dense fur and everything, so they don't necessarily lose that much heat when they were in the water either.
So what's the evidence for all of your assertions? How do you know that it lived and spent all this time in a burrow, and all that?
We based it off of platypus because of its
We based it, yeah, like a lot of the,
assumptions were made based off of a platypus.
But like not talking like you were able to observe this animal,
Right.
and watch its behavior, right? 'Cause nobody.
Right.
So yes, it was take care. So, really nice jaw fossil. Could you tell us more about what that says about what they might have eaten? So it's got nice teeth.
so it's kind of got like a range of teeth, I guess, like humans do, because it's got some molars and it's got more so like canines and incisors towards the front. So it was probably able to maybe perhaps eat like larger creatures if it was able to catch it, and
Like crush the shells of crayfish and mollusks that would live at the bottom as well too.
Well, yeah, are those like crushing teeth?
Yeah, these ones back here for mastication.
They're more like slicing teeth, right?
I guess they are sharp.
Sorry, how does your question relate to that?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's like for, like, the teeth is more like cutting for, like, maybe. Even nowadays, cutting is like maybe chewing the
Grinding.
crawfish or something.
Yeah,
so
that's what we asked.
the that with the shells, others going to that section, like, well, it's related, like, what will it be able to digest the shell?
So the shells, they don't really digest. They're mostly made out of indigestibles, mainly the calcium carbonate. And so that neutralizes their stomach acids, which is why they evolved to not really have an acidic stomach, a true acidic stomach.
I mean, no, Adam.
Oh.
Veronica, you talked about crayfish shells or?
Yeah, crayfish
Exoskeleton.
exoskeletons. No,
Like Creighton type stuff.
yes.
Yeah, so like, is there more fossil evidence? Like, are there limbs or things like that?
yeah, they found like a pretty complete fossil and everything, and there's like evidence that it's like spinal and tail column, like it had like movement, like it was able to like go up and down and kind of move whatever to propel itself.
Swimming.
Yeah, for swimming.
Fantastic. Yeah, tell us more about that, like, how do you know the things that you know? And what's the evidence, and talk about it and it helps us to understand why you went with the platypus as your model. Yeah,
Mhm.
and also I think you can capitalize on how interesting, because you can make a bigger point about animal being really ancient, like at the split of mammals, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I would definitely make a point about that. And then, because it's the ancestor of platypus.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, the
Modern monotremes, yeah, kidneys.
placental mammals and marsupials. Yeah, so, yeah, I would definitely make a big point about that. And then like, so from the jaw, it looks like more like a generalized mammal, but I guess from the other skeletal muscles, it looks more platypus-like.
Yeah,
Okay, cool. So then, yeah, anyway, I think that's something that you could definitely talk about or discuss about, especially like, so if that looks like a generalized,
mammal.
mammalian jaw. And what else was around at that time for it to eat? I mean, it's one of the earliest mammals, so were there a lot of other mammals at the time?
No, it was one of the biggest Jurassic like mammals. So they were all the mammals from this time period were super small as well. So it was mostly like rodents and things like that.
But lizards were around.
Yeah, lizards, yeah.
Don't think it ate fish.
The fish were, I think, a little bit too big, maybe, or that because we based it off of platypus, and the platypus didn't really eat any fish. They stuck to the bottom, just kind of like our,
So they're about the same size.
yeah, yeah, they're about the same size, yeah.
And then, so invertebrates would, okay, yeah, so you can like build it up more, right? So we can understand your line of thinking here. And then, yeah, and then really great job, but I think it a little bit jumped from talking about your assumptions to boom, your results. Yeah, so in the top, I know you're trying to not like have boring details, but what you should do though is tell us, where did you start from and how did you connect A to B and B to C and C to D to get the result?
So like how we went from so what we based the food off of and how we got its nutritional content and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Figure how you use backwards to get the total amount of food eaten.
Mm.
You solve for how many moles that. would be,
Right, how much
all of that,
protein,
like,
got it.
the logical steps you're gonna take to get to, so that we know, yeah. Okay, anyway, great job. Thank you. Yeah, interesting animals. Want to know more about your animals? Watch the other side if you want. Very good. On the other side,
Yeah, I'm trying to do it.
and you can make that floating bar go away if you click on more. Hide at the bottom, hide video. Okay.
Hi, welcome to our presentation about the Doriasis and its diet. To start off, we're gonna be giving some background information on the animal itself. So the time period it lived in was during the Devonian era, which is around 500 to 600 million, million or billion years ago. So it's a really old fish. And essentially what that era is known for is the explosion of fish as we know it. So what makes this unique is that it comes from the Petroaspis genus, which means that it is a shielded fish. Sorry. So the top is the drawing done by me, and it shows that it was on average like 16 centimeters long. And here's a more professional image of it. It is a jawless fish. So if you guys think of like hagfish, like those really small fish that you find more in like in stream stuff, That's essentially what it is. Its tail had really thick scales to go along with its armor. And those fins you see on its side they don't really move as much according to some papers, that it mainly glided to move around. Essentially, maybe the tail may have slacked the ground to give it some lift. Some papers also say that there might have been mounts on the side of the head, but for the most part, there's no actual evidence for it for the most part. And right here is called a sawtooth bill, which essentially is assumed to help shift through the sand or sediment to help get its food. In order to get its food, it actually half burrowed itself within the sediment. The environment at the time was around 30 degrees Celsius due to the explosion of also corals and other carbon dioxide producing things on land and in sea. It preferred to be a shallow water dweller, as was stated to prefer to live in shoals close to. As I said before, the Devonian era was the era of the fish explosion. It's generally, researchers have thought that conrictions, I think that's how you pronounce it. Sorry for my bad. Which essentially are your sharks, conodonts, which is like kind of basically your eels, like your eels you can usually find in like tide pools and stuff. Jellyfish, which essentially was all the fish that existed during that time, and algae, which you guys should hopefully know. And for more background, for later on, essentially like modern fish guts, as like you can see, it's pretty simple for the most part, like especially the parrotfish, which is kind of straight through. As you can see, there's like one pilar cecum, with one really long intestine for each. And the bottom left, as you can see, that is the modern jawless fish. It's essentially that is the digestive system of a hagfish.
All right, so how did the animal obtain its energy? To begin, we started off referring to design 1 for important information and values such as the daily metabolic rate. And then using our DMR, the purpose was to obtain information such as what does the animal eat, how much does it have to eat to support these daily metabolic rates, do nutrition analysis, energy density, energy assimilation, and finding out its surface area and how it absorbs and digests food. Feeding. So in order for its metabolic rates to be sufficient, it needs 2.66 kilojoules per day. And then referring to its diet, the Doriapsis mainly ate small crustaceans such as plankton. It shifted through sediment to eat. And small crustaceans, we use the shrimp for reference. We refer to the U.S. Department of Agriculture website for the nutritional content. And this is an image of the small crustacean, the shrimp that we used. And this is the nutritional content table. Energy assimilation. Okay, so using our DMR, we had to find the energy density with the percentage of food, the nutrition content, and food assimilation. And then we have to figure out how much does it have to eat to maintain these metabolic rates and survive. Certain values we used, such as the grams to mole conversions. We refer to withers, and absorption rates we also refer to withers. So we found out the food efficiency calculations, and then the mole conversions. And then from there, we went in on the fish gut absorption rate. So protein was the limiting food factor. So we used protein, and these were the values that we ended up getting. Yeah, what are the results? So absorption rate, energy assimilation, and energy density. Any questions? Yeah, so
You guys said it was from like the period when there was like the fish explosion or whatever,
Mhm.
so. Like, how did it deal with like competition? Like, did it have to move around a bunch? Cause you said it was a sediment feeder mostly, and it has a really low DMR, so.
So due to the fact that we don't know much information about it, we have the assumption that it didn't really live that long, and that's why it went extinct. The way it was kind of set up was it didn't move much, but it needed to move to survive. So hence the problems, yeah.
As you can see, this diagram kind of represents what researchers think. Essentially how it kind of fed, because you can see like, for the most part, like most of its body just kind of buried under the ground, yeah, which is this gray area. And the top area is like the surface, or like where because the mouth is right here, as you can see.
Also, based off of our calculations, it was a small fish, so it didn't really need to eat much to survive. So yeah. Yeah, if you can see here, the grams of food needed to be assimilated to support 0.6
You also
grams.
See it through the,
Sorry.
essentially, like you see at the top at the DMR, it's like, it's not even 3 kilojoules a day.
Yeah.
Which means it didn't really eat that much overall.
And then also referring back to the gut, we refer to small fish such as the hagfish, jawless fish. That was the closest related fish that we could find. So the assumed diameter of the intestine was 3 millimeters, 0.3 centimeters. So very small fish. Other questions?
If it was like a jawless fish, did it have like one mouth opening or whatever? And if it like did, how did it like eat? Did it just like suction its prey?
It was assumed that as other modern jawless fish that it did just kind of suck, it was a suction for the most part. Yes.
Is there like a fossil version?
Oh yeah, sorry, there are fossils. Sorry.
Fossil, or is it a complete fossil, or is it just? partial?
There are images of complete fossils. Or what is assumed to be full fossils. Because at least the images, like the recorded fossils, they're all like kind of in groups for the most part.
Like it's,
Um,
I mean, like groups of the same species.
I think it might have been a school because it's like. Sorry, we didn't get it, put an image, but essentially. There'll be some fossils are like one right here, and maybe like one right here. So, I apologize for not putting the fossil.
Nor has it been inside specialized saw-like structures, like similar to the jaw, or similar to the mouth. Was it used for killing prey?
Since
I think it was more used for like anchor, like to anchor itself down, and it had like a kind of shell-like, but it was more of yeah. Sure.
because we can
put it back to the first.
yeah, like because at least was we were reading research that it didn't really move these. It was like a lie, like I stated.
And it was
before.
more shielded, so for defense, I guess.
That's what it's an assumption that it kind of. And the assumption is that since it buried itself to eat and sleep, it developed the shield, like the heavily armored parts of its body. Actually, some of the research assumed that it was
Yeah.
plankton.
Small crustacean.
Like, yeah. That you either like get it from the free floating water or like shift through the sediment. That's the sawtooth bill.
Wait, so you use the shrimp, can you refer back to like why you use the shrimp? Cause that's what, yeah.
So from our research, when we were reading through, it said that we found information about this specific species and what it ate. And it said small crustaceans, mainly plankton, but small crustaceans like shrimp.
Interesting, but
Yeah.
it's still a fish. It would-
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is such a freaky looking fish. It's amazing. And your background was beautiful. Do you think, okay, so do you think that it's that sawbill is just so weird, right? Like, is it using it defensively or is it cutting something? Is it cutting through algae or do you think like are there other predators that it would be, useful for defending against?
Maybe, but for the most part, at least the literature we've read, it wasn't really used as a like defensive slash offensive tool. Because oddly enough, there wasn't really much assumptions about this other than for like shifting through the sediment or helping it to, along with the previous question about the why is it the fins jagged and stuff. So maybe it was mainly used for like sediment purposes.
The convertees are sharks and they're relative. So are there sharks alive at this time? Or are they before the
Like very ancient ancestors, it was said to be around.
Also, that era is known as like the explosion of fish. So there's so much stuff going on at that time that,
I'm just getting at, is everything jawless or?
no.
are there-
For the most, the fish were, I'm not too the sharks, I think there's early jaws, I think.
Yeah, so maybe. it had shark predators.
Which could also be another reason why maybe it went extinct, because maybe the shielding wasn't good enough.
Oh, like most of the jawless cats are just like, yeah, eventually went extinct. Yeah, super cool. So, okay, so 0.6 grams a day, like, so what size shrimp are you thinking it's eating? And how many shrimps is it eating a day?
That was kind of what we were having.
So I think it's just one of those things that those organisms that doesn't eat a lot.
Okay,
Yeah.
but how many shrimps or plankton is it eating per day? I mean, that would be really cool to figure out. I mean, 0.6 grams is a pretty small shrimp. Don't forget to include indigestibles in your count. You might have to guesstimate because if you're looking at USDA, it's only going to tell you the parts that people like to eat. It's not going to include the shell.
Yeah.
So you're gonna need to add a little bit to give it a shell. But yeah, I mean, is it eating planktivorous shrimp, like baby shrimp? Or is it eating an adult shrimp?
Pretty sure it's eating the
Yeah, we
larvae, assume it's the larvae.
Yeah. So, and then another question could be like, does it have to eat every day? Or is it eating like, much more than a 0.6 of a gram and then it's good for the week?
That could explain the sediment. Maybe semi-hibernate somewhere, but not
I mean,
hibernates,
that's a
but
really low food requirement, so. It's not gonna just take 0.6 of a bite of a shrimp. Or whatever, like.
yeah.
If, like, think about the package size that the food actually comes in. And so what would that mean for its foraging effort? Would it have to eat every day? That kind of thing. So you think it's like a flounder, like it's kind of. So, yeah, so anyway, that was really beautiful. I guess I'd like to see more conclusion. But you could also think about, and so the questions we're asking you could help to develop more of a conclusion, right? Yeah, and then anyway, so it's really intriguing, but I guess it makes me wonder, like, if it's settled on the bottom, but what's swimming above it? I had a question.
Oh, I was just wondering that you estimated potential loss of the side of the head. Is it showing? Where is it?
At least like one of the papers, so like maybe those.
first picture.
The first
The
picture.
artistic rendition.
On the side of its head, where is that?
Or what do you mean by potential?
Mouths on the side of his head.
I don't know, like one paper is like really vague on like what there, because apparently there was openings like under the fin, which I'm gonna just assume to maybe be that black, like these black areas.
So that part would presume.
I don't think so because like I said, like the literature, like it was a theory, but for the most part, other literatures just say that's like its gills for the most part.
This is super cool, right? This surface feeding, but then, so it's burrowing, but then it comes up to the surface to feed.
At least like the main source of information, it just sits there. Like that's
Oh,
what,
this is in the sediment,
Yeah.
not on, I'm sorry, I thought it was on the surface of the water. Okay.
yeah, no, it was a very, it
Oh,
wanted to stay at like the bottom, ocean,
so
the
that's why
seafloor.
you're walking along the bottom.
Potentially, yeah.
Okay, so maybe you want to make this really about a sit and wait predation strategy. Right, that would be consistent. Okay. Thank you. Hear more.
Okay, can we start? Hi, I'm Kylie,
This is Hall.
and our presentation is on the feeding, digestion, and the GI tract of the Andrewsarchus. So this starting is a picture drawn by us of our creature. Note its huge jaws. It's kind of like bulky stance. Okay, so here's some background info about our animal. It was the world's largest carnivore during the Eocene period. And it was a carnivorous scavenger. And it was thought to have a very active lifestyle. So I'm just gonna jump ahead a little bit to this. From our last paper, we assumed like a very active lifestyle of 8 hours AMR and then just 1 hour of hunting based off of other like data. And then it had similar cranial proportions to the Entelodon and the Dinohyus. So it probably shared similar feeding habits to them. And in this picture, you can see this one was the Dinohyus and this one was the Entelodon. They look pretty similar, or no, this is the Entelodon and this is the Andrewsarchus. So they all look pretty similar, and you can all note that their jaws are very big. Yeah. So the purpose of this paper was to use the pre-existing data that we already have to predict the Andrewsarchus's feeding and digestive habits. And I just wanted to note that in this picture over here, this is an Eohippus that the Andrewsarchus likely hunted. And you can see more for like background is the environment that they lived in, tropical, green, and their climate was very warm all year round. So for the methods.
So here's our DMR. As she said, it is really high as an active animal. And here's the horse meat energy resource. For the protein is 12 21.4%, fat 4.6, for the carbohydrate is 0%. Here's our energy density. So from the energy density, we can find out the food consumed, which is likely for 40 kilograms per day, which is really, really high. For the Ehopas is only like 10 kilograms each. So which means like it actually eats a lot. To fit their the DMR of the angel searches. Here is just the formula, and do you want to do the searches? Oh,
Yeah, so then the next part, we calculated the surface area of its gut, its GI tract. And we based that off of a tiger because the tiger lived in certain environments like tropical, warm. It was a large carnivore, had similar hunting and feeding habits as the Antrosarchus. So that's what we thought. Oh, we'll use the tiger's intestines to model the surface area of the gut. So we got so this is a diameter of 4 centimeters from the scaling, and that's how we got our length. And as you can see, it's very long, which is concerning because if you do the volume of the gut with a length of 109 meters, then it would just be around 13 square meters, which would be bigger than the animal itself. So that was a
so
concern.
that is not make any sense for our animal. And so by the way, for the key diet finding, the angel searches needs like 40, as just as I said, to support the DMR, and it actually is 4.2 isohopes like each day to support DMR. So which gives the conclusion like one horses may not necessarily to be able to feed the angel searches, and it will hunt like multiple or has another resource food, for example, the turtles. So basic on the other hand, we think that based on the larger size of the angel searches, it's inferred that they will really on the size to snatch the food from other small predators or scam to satisfy its DMR. For the lies of the converse intestine, it should be relative shorter, but our estimation results is very like long intestine interesting, for the uncharacterized characteristic of our carnivores and more characteristic of herbivore. So we just create our new DMR based on the like least active and maybe more resting, and which still didn't fit our like guideline, which is 67 meters, but it is actually much better. Well, just I think in the future, we're gonna make it as less active animals and make like the godless and the god's diameter more reasonable, so that it can fit our animal's body size.
Any question?
like, what modern day animal do you like compare it to?
Oh. Well, it's interesting because this thing is actually like the ancestor of the deer, which is an herbivore, and this thing was a carnivore. Well, based on like a lot of evidence, like its jaws and stuff. So that's why we based it off of a tiger, because the tiger was kind of like the biggest land predator we could find that lived in the same climate and had the same like hunting and eating habits. Yeah, connecting to the tiger, I guess the tiger is like, or the Andrewsarchus is twice as big as a tiger pretty much. So we're thinking it's possible that the length of the gut or the diameter of the gut might be twice as much as the tiger's one, which would affect how we calculate the length of the gut, but we're not really sure. You can do that, so just thinking about it.
So I understand like why you guys base its food source off of like the horse ancestors, but you said like it's other sources of food were like turtles. Where did you come to that? Because the horse and turtle are very different.
Yeah, that is on the resource of which one is that? The stream. Do you have it?
I actually do. We base it off of like just articles that we found on the Andrewsarchus. It was, so it's not only a carnivore, but it was likely a scavenger too, and they live near the water. So it was thought that they might have preyed on some turtles as well as like, in addition to hunting deer, I mean horses, the little horses. So we were thinking it could be possible that maybe it's just not getting its like horses are just not sustainable for the Andrewsarchus and it eats something else more.
So how many turtles do you think in order to support this?
The turtles will have more fat and carbohydrates and probably, yeah. But with the lower mass, so it probably have to eat more turtles. That depends on the width. That I didn't really search for the width for the turtle.
Put back on this question on it. So if we preyed on land and water on this? Okay.
Kind of, actually. Like it didn't really live in the water, but
Just like kind of stayed in the shop.
it stays in the shallow water to keep the skin maybe to not.
Didn't say.
Didn't
But
really say, but
likely turtle. I mean, likely.
I
water
will
turtle.
assume the turtles is living in the water, but sometimes goes up to the lands for to raising their.
These are facts that you can find.
No.
There are many more species
Oh.
of land turtles than aquatic turtles. I mean, returning to the ocean is secondary, right?
Okay.
So, yeah. Or it's better to just say you don't know if you don't know. Okay. Any other questions?
Wait, can we ask you guys a question?
Yeah.
Are we allowed to? Like, what do you think? Like, where do you think we went wrong in the calculation of, because our DMR is quite high. Even the second round, even though we really like, we significantly decreased the AMR and the MMR, and we tried to maximize the amount that it spent resting to a reasonable degree, not like just changing all of its habits. So yeah, we made it as low as possible, but it's still like the gut link is still really long.
What was your different activities?
Or how many? Like, what is it doing?
So according to Matthew 2017, Well, it had to like it likely had to move frequently to hunt and find food. So we were thinking that's
So most of the time it is actually walking around to find the food. It only for like a 10 minutes period of time is chasing the horse we choose. And which is our MMR, and for our active metabolic rates is about like 5 hours. It's like walking around looking for the dead animals or looking for other small predators which could be the food resource, like take the food resource from other small tiny predators, as the androsearches have a huge body size. They can scare the small predator away and get their food.
Yeah, I was just gonna say like, the gut length is 67 meters, but it could be like coiled up a lot and so,
Yes.
so it could take a long time for it to pass through the animal.
our main concern was that typically like carnivores have actually like shorter intestine lengths. So even for like
Did you know the tigers? That thing?
it's like 13.
13.
No, how many meters was it? It was like it was less. It was 2 meters.
something.
Okay, that sounds a little short, but anyway, in general, it's shorter, yeah.
So 60
Okay, so let's go back to Abby's question, like, what is it doing? So what, oh, you stay on there, stay on there. So you're choosing a multiplier of 3 for the AMR, so what activity would 3 represent?
Like one, just basically.
Yeah, like foraging.
Slowly.
Yeah,
Does 3 reflect slow walking?
I think so.
Like it's not always like walking like that kind of slow. It's like
Where did you get the number 3 from?
Our discussion
Okay.
week 2.
Oh, the numbers, so 3 times EMR is quite intense. And so you need to revisit why you chose those particular multipliers, and if it actually matches the activity that you're imagining. If you look at the table that we use, right, and withers, you want to make sure they're comparable in effort. But like, if you say 5 hours, that means like 5 solid hours of walking.
yeah, because as the reading from the other articles is like that is active. So
Well, what they say, okay. When you, okay, so when you're talking about, well, active doesn't mean fast walking. Okay, so those metabolic multipliers that I'm assuming you're using the Withers table 4-10 or whatever. That's measured at steady state. Like you're walking 6 kilometers an hour. And at 6 kilometers an hour, it might be 3 times VMR. For a human, that's pretty fast. Or whatever. I mean, I'm just kind of making it up because I don't remember exactly. So, but and people use active in many different ways. Like activity period could mean the time that it's awake, or active could mean that it moves more often than it rests. So you kind of have to like kind of read between the lines and think about what that really means. And so the other thing to think about is somebody watched The Lion, right? What did it do all the time?
resting.
Rest. Yeah. So is it a sit and wait predator like a lion? Or is it like a running down its prey kind of predator? Even wolves actually spend most of their time resting, but they do run down their prey. I mean, a lot of predators will run down their prey at the moment of capture, but not pretty much just rest the rest of the time. I would say wolves are more active than lions, but even they are kind of lazy. Yeah, so you have to make sure that the numbers that you choose represent your concept of what the animal is really doing. And how, like, even if it's active, it might still be resting most of the time, but it's paying attention. Or it might like walk and stuff. Does that make sense? Hey, we can talk about it more later. Guess we're gonna talk about it some more. Okay, there, do you guys have questions? Okay, so what else lived at the time that it could eat? Like, what was the community like? And was it the top predator?
It was a top predator.
Okay, that's cool. So what else could it eat? Besides the horse and the turtle?
Large birds and reptiles.
Was it like, I guess, was it a time when there's prey everywhere? Or like, did it have to put in a lot of effort to find prey?
It's like probably like everywhere can find the place, like, but not that much. It's like the food resources enough for them to like to get.
So maybe it didn't have to travel really far to find. food.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it looks really good, but maybe you just have to revisit your assumptions and think about a little bit more carefully your mental model of what's going on. And then I think it'll come together better.
Okay.
Okay, very nice. Especially since it's like related to all these deer. Are there deer around for tea? I mean, it's just such a weird animal.
Yeah.
Okay, very nice, very nice. Okay. Oh, shoots. Okay, stop.